Hello everyone, Mike Starks with Remax Town & Country here, bringing you the 2023 year-end market real estate report for Fredericksburg and Gillespie County. And I'm sure you don't have to watch this video to know that the real estate market was certainly a lot slower this year than it was the last couple of years. But with all the doom and gloom you probably saw on TV, you may think, it's just been awful with dramatic price drops. But honestly, Fredericksburg and Gillespie counties held up pretty well. We did see a lot less volume in total sales, but that was expected and really nothing earth-shattering. Just a slower pace. Prices have kind of just gone level instead of the really high appreciation rates we had been seeing. So let's just start off by going straight to the local numbers. Starting as I usually do, let's look at the total sales for Gillespie County, so everything that's sold in the county. So total dollar sales for Gillespie County in 2022 was a little over $445 million. You compare that to last year, 2023, where we sold $342 million. That's a pretty significant drop of like 23.15%. And that slower volume was also seen in the individual number of properties that traded hands. In 2022, we'd sold 592 individual properties in Gillespie County. In 2023, we saw 451 real estate transactions. So that was down about 23.82%. And you can find all sorts of causes for this drop. High interest rates was really a big factor. A lot of just economic instability, and really just as huge as anything was the really high inflation that just really was digging into people's pocketbooks and hurt expendable income. And as usual, I put a lot of that on Fed policy. But let's move on to in-town home sales. That's Fredericksburg city limits. Kind of the same story here. With a drop in overall sales volume. In 2022, we'd sold a little over $166 million worth of homes in Fredericksburg. In 2023, we ended the year with about a little over $132 million in total volume. So a drop of about 20.43%. And really a long way from our peak of real estate madness back in 21, where we'd sold like $193 million. But 2023 was really about the same as 2020, and 2020 was a good year. So even though the total sales volume was down from the last couple of years, keep it in perspective about just how crazy the previous 2 years were. Then on the total number of individual homes sold, we went from 252 individual homes trading hands in 2022 to 213 homes trading in 2023, so a drop there of about 15.48%. Now, to talk about home prices. In 2022, we ended the year with an average home in the Fredericksburg city limits being $659,689. Meanwhile, at the end of this last year, 23, the average home price ended at $631,780. So that's a drop of 4.23%. And we saw about the same drop in the price per foot, with 2022 ending with an average price per foot of $355.47. You compare that to the end of 23 with an average price per foot of $334.19. So there a drop of 5.92%. But I talked about this a little in the mid-year report, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it more now, because if you really dig into those numbers, almost all of that drop can be contributed to weakness in the short-term rental sales, which really took a beating this year. The city was really on the warpath against STRs, which made a lot of investors nervous about buying anything in the city limits. Then really probably the biggest factor is just so many people had unrealistic expectations that, STRs are this huge cash cow, and they just really aren't. But, the last couple of years, a lot of folks just caught up in the frenzy, and now that the reality is set in, a lot of those marginal STRs being sold are just going back into single-family use. But anyway, where I was going with that is that the average STR in the city limits in 2022 was trading for $953,907, or about $543 per foot. In 2023, with the previous factors I just mentioned, the average STR was trading for $731,750, or $453 per foot. So that's like a 23.29% drop. So really that 4% drop we're seeing in the overall home prices is really almost completely tied into that into the fact that people aren't paying those stupid, crazy STR prices, and those are starting to come back to reality. And, unfortunately, up until 2023, our MLS did not have a real clear set category where you could, just filter out STRs from the regular housing. But in 2023, we did have a very clear category. So in this coming year, I'm going to start trying to separate the STR market from the single-family home market, which will end up being a little tricky because it'll look like we're seeing a drop in the average home prices since we won't be including those STR numbers. But anyway, I'll figure out how to make that make sense later this year. And then one more quick note on the STRs, because if you own one and you just listen to this, you may be thinking, oh my God. But really, now that the city has finally got the new rules they wanted in place and the city is no longer talking about making STR permits non-transferable, the investors will likely come back and become a little less nervous about investing. And since basically with the new rules, there'll be very few new permits issued by the city. So I think the existing quality STRs that have a good rental history, I think we'll see a much stronger year for them in 2024. So let's move on to land sales in Gillespie County. Here, similar story, lower sales volume, but the price is staying mostly steady with, some segments actually being a fair bit higher, but a couple being a little bit lower too. But as a whole, the average price per acre in 2023 increased. So to talk numbers, in 2022, we sold 3,944 acres in Gillespie County, and in 2023, we sold 3,060 acres. In dollars, that represented $106 million's worth of raw land sales in 22 and $70 million in 23. So that was a drop of like 33.7% in the total sales volume. But if we look at the average price per acre, we're slightly up. At the end of 22, we ended the year with an average price per acre for land in Gillespie County at $22,906, and we ended 23 with an average price per acre of $23,147. So a modest increase of like 1.05%. And now just to break down the individual tract sizes. So as I usually do, 1 to 5 acres, $54,995 per acre was the average for the end of 23. And that's actually up 3.21%. 6 to 10 acre tract, average price was $34,584 at the end of this year. That was up really big by 55.11%. 11 to 25 acres, we ended 23 at $26,348 per acre. That one was down a little bit from the previous year by 8.17%. 26 to 50 acres, ended the year at $26,367 per acre, and that's way up over 22 by 94%. Not quite sure why that one was always up so much, but anyway, 51 to 100 acres, the average price per acre was $25,212. That was up almost 70% over the previous year. 101 to 250 acres, $13,872 per acre. And that segment, the 101 to 250 acres, was by far the biggest loser for 23. That was down by 26.01% on the average price per acre. Then 250 acres plus, we ended the year at $17,815 per acre, and that's also up by 38% over 2022. Then I've been tracking the sales on US Highway 290 East separately because, as I mentioned before, they're just such a commercial product these days. So the average price for anything on 290 East for 23 ended at $75,896 per acre. And I also keep Boot Ranch numbers out of the general price per acre in the county. But if you're curious, the average price per acre in Boot Ranch, which is usually like a 1 to 5 acre tract, ended 2023 at $386,764 per acre. And that's why I don't mix those into our usual averages. And those boot ranch prices may sound crazy, but that's until you look at what Fredericksburg City lots have done in the last year. So just to go back to 2021, the average lot price in Fredericksburg city lot was $97,955. Then in 2022, it took a huge jump up to $196,833 for the average lot price. But then this year, we ended with the average lot price in Fredericksburg of $266,833. And now that huge jump was spawned by just a big lack of inventory. And we have a lot of new lots coming up for sale this year, so I'm fairly certain we'll see that average price coming back down to reality. Then just real quick on rural homes, on the acreage in Gillespie County, we had a good 2023 with 93 individual properties trading hands for a total of a little over $84 million. And the average home outside the city limits with land, the average price of that home was $1,019,000. And as I've said in the past, I really don't try to compare to year on these prices just because there's so much variety every year. Some homes are on 100 acres, others are on 3 acres. So unless you really try subtracting out the land and seeing what the home value was, it's just a hard category to compare prices from year to year. Then lastly, quick update on commercial sales. 2023 was not a huge commercial year with just a little over $14 million in transactions in the MLS for 2023 compared to about $35 million in 2022. So big difference, but honestly about half the commercial sales in town never hit the MLS. So I do track the commercial numbers, but they don't paint a very complete picture. So all in all, 2023, much slower years in terms of total sales volume, numbers of properties being sold. But just kind of like the last downturn of 2008 and 9, even though things were moving much slower, we're holding pretty steady on pricing. And as we head into 2024, I think we'll kind of start seeing things pick back up a little bit again. Not at the same breakneck speed of 21 and 22, but we should see the total sales volume a little bit higher this year. And not just in Fredericksburg, but most of Texas. The feds are saying they're going to cut interest rates, and that should be helping. Plus, the Texas economy is just still really strong. At the Fredericksburg Economic Forum they put on this year, one of the economists shared that in the last 12 months, 25% of all the jobs created in the U.S. were created in Texas. And when you think about that, that's really pretty amazing. And then another big factor that I'm seeing personally, there's still a lot of cash buyers out there that have been kind of sitting on the sidelines to waiting to see what was going to happen. And those folks, that have been sitting there, they're looking at their dollars and they just see the dollar is getting less and less valuable the longer they hold on. So I really think a lot of those are going to look to jump into the real estate market to protect their money. Because, really, real estate's really still one of the safest bets out there to keep pace with inflation or maybe even outpace inflation. I also think a lot of folks that have seen some of the gains in the real estate market in the past few months are going to take at least some of those gains they've made and diversify into some real estate. So anyway, 2023, slower year, but Texas will probably start pulling out a lot quicker than most places. And if you live in Texas, it's hard to find a better spot than Fredericksburg. So that is the 2023 real estate market report. As always, you can find all of these stats and more on my site at mikestarks.com. If you've got questions, feel free to give me a call, and thanks for watching.